There is a banking strategy that private bankers casually mention to clients with 7 figures sitting in their account that they have never once mentioned to anyone with a regular checking account. It's not illegal. It's not even particularly complicated. It's just never been explained to you. On purpose. It's called buy, borrow, die. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how the wealthy use their own assets as a personal tax-efficient ATM, while you're out here getting charged $35 for an overdraft of $4.
Stay with me, because this isn't just theory. We're going through the real mechanism, the real research behind it, the real reason banks never bring it up to people like us, and exactly how you, with whatever you currently have, can start using a smaller version of it. Yes, even you, the person whose savings account currently has a personality disorder. In 2014, Oracle founder Larry Ellison reportedly took out a loan against his own company stock instead of selling shares to fund his lifestyle. Why would a billionaire borrow money he clearly didn't need? Because selling stock triggers a taxable event. Borrowing against it doesn't. He gets the cash he wants, keeps every share he owns, keeps voting control, keeps the upside if the stock rises, and pays an interest rate that's often lower than the tax he would have paid by selling.
And Ellison isn't an outlier here. He's the rule. Elon Musk has borrowed billions against his Tesla shares for years. Mark Zuckerberg has used similar share-backed loans to fund personal real estate purchases without selling a single share of Meta stock. This is so common among the ultra-wealthy that ProPublica's 2021 investigation into IRS tax data, based on leaked records of thousands of America's wealthiest taxpayers, found that many of them reported true tax rates in the low single digits, some years effectively near zero, almost entirely because their wealth sat in unsold, unborrowed against, or strategically borrowed against assets, rather than taxable income. This isn't a billionaire-only trick hiding behind some secret vault. It's a basic financial mechanism called a securities-backed line of credit, and the only reason it feels like a secret is because nobody at your local bank branch has ever sat you down and explained it, because statistically, you don't have enough assets yet for them to bother.
That's not a conspiracy. That's just how the incentive structure works. And understanding that incentive structure is the first step to using it yourself. Quick pause. If you've never heard the phrase buy, borrow, die before this exact moment, that's worth a like, because that single phrase describes how a huge percentage of generational wealth in this world is legally preserved. It's information, and information like this is exactly why this channel exists. If you're not subscribed yet, now's a good time, because we're just getting started. And the next part is the part that actually applies to people who are not billionaires. Here's how buy, borrow, die actually works, broken into 3 uncomfortably simple steps.
Buy assets that appreciate over time. Stocks, real estate, a business. Not consumer goods. Not things that lose value the moment you drive them off the lot. This step sounds obvious, but here's the part most people skip. It requires deferring consumption today for ownership tomorrow. And deferred gratification is, scientifically, one of the hardest things for the human brain to do consistently. There's a reason the famous Stanford marshmallow experiment became such a cultural touchstone. Our brains are wired to grab the marshmallow now, not wait for too later. Borrow against those assets when you need cash instead of selling them. Banks are happy to lend against appreciating collateral because the risk is low for them. If you stop paying, they simply take the collateral, which is still valuable. You get liquidity, you keep ownership, and in most countries, loan proceeds are not considered taxable income, because legally a loan isn't income, it's debt you owe back. You're not avoiding tax illegally, you're simply not generating a taxable event in the first place. That distinction is the entire game. Die, and yes, this is the genuinely uncomfortable part, owning the asset, so that in many tax jurisdictions, the asset's value resets for tax purposes at death, often eliminating the unrealized capital gains tax entirely for whoever inherits it.
The debt gets settled from the estate, and the family keeps what's left, frequently at a fraction of the tax bill a sale during the original owner's lifetime would have triggered. In economic literature, going back to Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations, and in basically every modern tax policy paper since, economists have pointed out that tax law tends to be written by and for people who already have capital. That's not bitterness, that's just citation. Research published by the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy has repeatedly documented that the wealthiest households derive a disproportionate share of their net worth growth from unrealized capital gains, specifically because those gains are taxed only when realized through a sale they can simply choose never to make.
Here's the part that should genuinely annoy you a little. This isn't a loophole in the sense of an accident. It's not a crack in the system that nobody noticed. It is, structurally, the system working exactly as designed. The frustrating part isn't that it exists. The frustrating part is that almost nobody explains it to you before you're old enough to actually use it. If the word die in a finance video made you laugh and feel slightly uncomfortable at the same time, congratulations, you have the correct human response. Drop a comment telling me which of the 3 steps, buy, borrow, or die, sounds the most foreign to how you currently think about money. And share this with the one friend who thinks investing means buying a lottery ticket with extra steps. You know who that is. So why doesn't everyone do this? 2 real reasons, and only one of them is about money.
Reason 1. You need appreciating assets to borrow against in the first place. No assets, no leverage. This is the actual wealth gap. Not income, but ownership of appreciating assets. Research from the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances consistently shows that the top 10% of households by net worth hold the overwhelming majority of total stock market value and investment real estate, while the bottom half of households primarily hold depreciating assets, like cars, or no assets at all. Let that sit for a second, because it reframes the entire conversation about wealth inequality. It's not just that the wealthy have more dollars, it's that their dollars are sitting in a completely different category of thing, assets that grow, while everyone else's dollars are parked in things that quietly lose value the moment they're purchased. 2 people can have the exact same net dollar amount and be playing 2 entirely different financial games, depending on what form that money takes.
Reason 2, and this is the psychological gut punch, most people who do have appreciating assets still don't use this strategy, because borrowing against your own wealth requires a level of financial confidence and calm that most of us were never taught. In The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel writes about something he calls the difference between being rich and being wealthy. Rich is the car, the watch, the visible spending. Wealthy is the invisible asset, quietly compounding in the background, that you never touch unless you absolutely have to. The buy, borrow, die strategy only works for people who have already made peace with looking, on paper, less impressive than they actually are. Think about how strange that actually is. The strategy requires you to be, functionally, boring, patient, quiet, in a culture absolutely saturated with "look at how much I have" content. The actual wealth-building move is closer to "you'll never know how much I have." And that's the point. Nassim Taleb, in Skin in the Game, makes a similar observation. He notes that real wealth is invisible by design, because visible wealth invites both taxation and targeting, while invisible wealth simply compounds in peace. And that right there is the real secret. It's not the mechanism, it's the personality required to use it. If that landed for you, if you've ever spent money specifically to look like you have money, hit that like button. No judgment. I've absolutely done it too. Acknowledging it is genuinely most of the battle.
Subscribe if you want the unfiltered version of how money actually moves in this world every single week. No fluff. Now, here's the part that actually applies to you, because most of us are not borrowing against a hedge fund stake. You don't need to be a billionaire to use a smaller, more humble version of this exact mechanism. If you have a brokerage account with invested assets in it, many brokerages offer something called a margin loan, or a securities-backed line of credit, often starting at modest thresholds, sometimes just a few $1,000s in holdings. The interest rates are frequently lower than a personal loan or credit card, because the loan is secured by your own investments. The bank isn't taking much of a risk on you, which is exactly why it's cheaper than the unsecured debt most people default to. If you own a home with equity in it, a home equity line of credit functions on the exact same psychological principle. Instead of selling the house to access cash, you borrow against the value you've already built, while the asset keeps appreciating in the background. This is, functionally, the exact same buy, borrow, die logic, just wearing a smaller, less glamorous outfit. There's even a humbler version that requires no investment account at all. A cash-secured loan or line of credit against a savings account or certificate of deposit. You're not avoiding any taxable event here in a meaningful way, but you are practicing the exact muscle the wealthy use, accessing liquidity without liquidating the underlying asset, and letting the asset keep compounding undisturbed. This is not financial advice telling you to go max out a loan tomorrow. Leverage cuts both ways, and if your asset value drops, particularly with margin loans tied to stock market volatility, you can face a margin call, which is genuinely one of the fastest ways to turn a clever strategy into a financial disaster. Research on margin lending behavior consistently shows that the investors who get hurt by leverage are overwhelmingly the ones using it for short-term speculation rather than long-term asset preservation. The wealthy use this slowly and conservatively, often only borrowing a small fraction of what they're technically allowed to. That patience is the actual unlock, not the loan itself.
In The Intelligent Investor, Benjamin Graham draws a sharp line between investing and speculating, and it maps almost perfectly onto this conversation. Borrowing against assets to fund a calm, long-term life is investing behavior. Borrowing against assets to chase a hot stock tip from someone's cousin is speculating behavior wearing a nice suit. Same mechanism, completely different outcome, because the psychology behind it is the actual variable that matters. Okay, real quick. If you just realized you might actually have access to a small version of this strategy right now and had no idea, comment the words, "I didn't know that," below. I want to see how many of us just had the same realization at the same time. And if this is genuinely useful information,
not just entertaining. Share it. This is the kind of video that helps more when it's passed along than when it just sits in your watch history. Here's the truth underneath all of this, and it's going to sound harsh, so brace yourself. The banking system isn't hiding this from you with some locked door and a secret password. It's hiding in plain sight. In financial literacy, most people were never taught, wrapped in language specifically designed to sound boring enough that nobody bothers reading the fine print. Behavioral economist Richard Thaler, who won a Nobel Prize for exactly this kind of research, has long pointed out that financial institutions exploit something called complexity as a moat. Making products deliberately confusing isn't an accident, it's a business strategy, because confused customers default to the simplest, often most expensive option, while informed customers find the cheaper, smarter route. In his book Misbehaving, Thaler details study after study showing that even highly educated people consistently make worse financial decisions when information is presented in a deliberately convoluted way, compared to when the exact same information is presented simply. The confusion itself is the product. So, the real banking secret isn't a strategy, it's an information asymmetry. The wealthy aren't smarter than you. They, or their advisors, simply did the boring work of reading the manual that most of us threw away unopened. Here's the part that stings the most, if I'm honest with you. A huge amount of financial education was never withheld out of malice. It was withheld out of profit motive. An informed customer borrows cheaply and pays off debt efficiently. A confused customer pays late fees, carries high interest balances, and generates more revenue. You were never the customer the system was built to protect. You were the customer the system was built to monetize, gently, for decades, one overdraft fee at a time.
And that's genuinely good news, in a strange way. Because a manual can be read by literally anyone willing to sit still for 20 minutes. You don't need a trust fund for that. You just need to stop assuming this information wasn't meant for you. So no, you probably don't have a stock portfolio large enough to fund a yacht with a loan tomorrow morning. That's fine. Nobody's asking you to. What I am asking is that you stop treating financial information like it belongs exclusively to other people. The mechanism is public. The research is public. The names, the books, the studies, all of it is sitting in plain sight, exactly where it's been the whole time. The only thing that was ever actually private was the conversation. And we just had it.
If this changed how you think about borrowing, assets, or that overdraft fee from earlier, like the video. It genuinely helps this reach someone who needed to hear it today. Drop a comment telling me one thing from this video you're going to look into this week. Even something small. Even just, I'm finally going to check what's in my brokerage account. I read every comment, and I will absolutely follow up on the most common ones in a future video. Share this with someone who deserves to know the rules of the game they're already playing. And subscribe, so the next conversation like this one finds you first, instead of slipping past you in a feed full of noise. See you in the next one.